You know what I take for granted? The ground under my own 2 feet. Think about how constant the ground is in our lives. I mean, unless you're a pilot or you work on a boat or something, there's little doubt in my mind that you feel more secure on the ground than you do in the air or on the water. Being off the ground can be thrilling or convenient if you're trying to travel great distances, but the ground is comfortable. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 9 and 10, God creates the dry land. It says this, "And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good." So after creating light, and after creating the skies and the clouds, God creates the ground. And he calls the ground in Hebrew, eretz, earth. This earth, the soil, the ground on which we walk, is like light and rain before it, an essential theme of Scripture. But day 3 is not done yet. God does more creation on this day. Verse 11 begins telling us about that process. It says, "And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which their seed is, each according to its kind, on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 3rd day." Perhaps the greatest gift we derive from the ground is our physical nourishment. Most of our food comes from the ground, and what doesn't come from the ground eats what comes from the ground. God created that. God created the ground, and he created what comes from the ground. In the ancient world, there were many things that were worshipped. I'd argue even today people worship things, though they may not recognize their absolute devotion to something as worship. Every culture had a hierarchy of many deities responsible for all of the different aspects of life. High among these objects of worship were the earth and harvest gods. The thought was, if you wanted a good harvest from your land, you needed to pray to the right lowercase g God to ensure you would get a good harvest. Of course, even then, the thought was that you were subject to the fickle whims and the moods of that particular deity. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9 through 13 tells us something different. God, the one who created the universe, is also the God responsible for bringing about the land that we live on and the abundance of the harvest we draw from it. Later in this chapter, we see that God's intention for humanity was that they would always enjoy abundance. But it's important for us to understand that the security of our terrestrial home, the world that we walk on, that comfort we feel as we walk through a field, or the joy we experience when we enjoy the goodness of an apple or avocado, we owe that experience to one God. If we're grateful for something, he's the God we should offer thanksgiving to. What's good in your life today? Maybe your answer is something as simple as the ground beneath your feet. But whatever it is, your food, your family, your health, be thankful to the one God for it. I love you, and I pray your day is filled with the abundance which God intends.